and welcome to another episode of Presence Practice with Poonam and Parker. Hello, and all of you, of course. Today we have on tap the topic of the usefulness of psychoanalysis. Eckhart, in this month's video, which is November 2019, speaks towards the three-fourths mark in the video about this topic and suffering and personalization. So I won't say too much more. Let's start that video.
Acquire new skills, all this is good. But you're not, can you find yourself in these things? Can you free yourself from this always recurring sense of discontent or unease or not enough or I haven't arrived yet, which the Buddha, by the way, called in the Pali language dukkha. Buddha said, wherever you go and whatever you do, you're going to find dukkha, which means, translated, suffering. Or other translations are unsatisfactoriness, misery, or just plain unhappiness. These are various translations of that word. So there's a reality, but this Buddha said, I don't know whether he ever used the word surface reality, maybe not, but that's what it means. So then you only know, and you also know yourself only through concepts. And that's a very huge limitation, no matter how much you know about yourself and your past. Yes, of course it's interesting, and there may be a place for even investigating things that happened in your past. There is a place for that. Psychoanalysis, why not? After 15 years you may know a little bit more about yourself. But it's knowing about, it's not knowing. So there you have, knowing about is concepts. And the knowing is knowing through awareness. It's non-conceptual knowing, it's a deeper knowing. So we have the two dimensions that you need to move in this world as a human being. You move in the dimension of the human, which is the surface dimension of the person, the personality, with its knowledge and its activities, and that's related to doing. There's always something else to do, obviously, as a human. You are a doing human, but now you are, on the one hand, you are human, but you're a human being. Now, for most humans, they have no idea of the being that they are. That whole dimension they are unaware of. And that is, they only live on the dimension of conceptual knowing as a human. So they are half a human. They're not a full human being. There was even a Confucius, who is perhaps not the most inspiring philosopher, but he had some deep insights. Confucius in ancient China said that, roughly translated, most humans have not yet become fully human. And so that's interesting. So we are moving towards something, and you need to be a human being, not just a human. That's the most frustrating thing ever. I'm just human. Oh no, where's the being? What are you talking about, being? Of course, if you're just the being, then you go,
I love this topic so much because it's where the balance between being and doing shows up for us all commonly. I spent years in therapy. Something wrong with this therapist. This is the perfect therapist. But still didn't stop suffering until I was able and willing to look at the insanity that was present without the story about the insanity, to just look and see it with some levity. So Eckhart's been asked a couple of times about psychiatry, about depression, about serotonin and dopamine and chemicals in the brain and medication. And no one can say, once you say no medication for you, you create a belief around something. You shouldn't do this. Now we have shoulds, and there's no place for that. So each individual sit still and know what is right for us. And what was powerful about this video is about really holding the horizontal and vertical dimension as we may need to explore patterns. Sometimes we need someone to help us look at something, or someone to grieve with, or someone to help move energy around our body. These are people that come and assist us along the way. But if we're not breaking the identification with the story, if we're personalizing it, if we're making ourselves special because of parts or all of our story, if we tell any story that's comparing or wanting us to, or setting us up to be superior or inferior or less broken or more broken, all of these stories that can come from the facts of the situation and the healing that where there's potential for healing there. But it cannot be done without a deep surrender and an authentic dedication to seeing what is and then accepting it completely. So it's like anything, everything's somewhat of a paradox. So yes, it can be helpful. Yes, we can take it too far. It can take us off the path of being fully present and dying every moment. Too much past or needing to understand is a lack of forgiveness. So there's lots of things that can come to us if we just sit with these stories that we have. Also, more intimate friendships, I think, are being created on the planet. And that's good therapy too. To call a friend and say this obstacle, and the friend will know how to offer either that space or offer some tips. So thank you for being on this planet at this time where we are learning to be both humans and beings. And Poonam, isn't this a fascinating topic? I've had it come up a few times.
On psychoanalysis and the use of psychoanalysis.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like somebody that has had that experience of a therapist, that therapist can become a codependent relationship. That now we think that we need the therapist always in our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I love the fact that Eckhart, without a whole bunch of you need to sit in this pose and do this, the 10 years of yoga, or without any of that, he comes to a direct pointer. He says, be in presence, right? And it is up to
Yes.
us to figure out what is that presence and how do we experience presence, which is stillness. Because no matter how many therapists, no matter how many friends, it is our presence power that is going to erase the pattern.
Yes.
Nothing else
It,
can erase our pattern, which is the cause of suffering, which is what he starts off with, right? That Buddha always said that our suffering is caused because of our desires. Go ahead, Parker. Sorry.
yes. The what he's saying here is, where is this balance between human and being? Are we taking our stories? I think in one of his books, he said someone can give you a 15,000 page dossier about yourself, but that's not yourself. So, and there's no hard and fast answer to psychoanalysis. It's not to say don't do it or don't, and there's many different kinds: psychology, psychotherapy, and then psychiatry, which is more about the balance, I think, of chemicals in our brains and disorders that can arise there. So we can't say individually where someone is on the path. In the end, all paths are right. Someone sitting in therapy for 10 years with a 15,000 page dossier, and then they hold this dossier up and say, this is who I am, and really, really believe it and hang it, still isn't wrong. You need to do that. You're not done suffering. That martyr yourself to the dossier. And there's a lot of seriousness there. Yes, the listening to Awaken a New Earth, Eckhart Tolle's second book, was worth all the years of therapy. It was, that book was, I listened to it repeatedly, and that was so healing, because in a completely, his voice in the audio of this is so clear and so free of judgment. So even the most prickly ego, that's shell of the ego that's ready to crack, it slides in there so smoothly, opens us up, and that's beautiful therapy. So to not be so caught up in being a human that we've personalized everything and been wronged and now need to be heard and need someone to see if they can solve it with us. We're only going to be solving as much as we're willing to surrender to. So that's the balance of being and doing.
And the question is like, if we do the analysis and develop more and more of a mental construct, then we are adding on form and more form and more form, because every mental construct is a thought form. So instead of being our presence, which is pure crystalline luminous essence, instead of being that pure crystalline luminosity of a stardust being, we are like more form and more form and more form. So having that dossier actually does not help, because now we are attached to this lengthy mental construct. I think that is what he's saying. Don't get attached to all these mental constructs that the therapist is going to give you, that, oh, you've been a victim of this trauma, or you're a woman, whatever it may be. Don't get attached to that. Get into presence and use your presence to shed light on your behaviors and dissolve them. Right? So do your beingness, do more of the beingness, and then go be a human, so that your human doings are imbued with the beingness, are imbued with the consciousness, and then it becomes elevated. That's why he calls it, in Bhagavad Gita, he calls it consecrated action. So even touching a mouse becomes consecrated action. Posting something becomes consecrated action. And each and every human has the capacity. It's not just the pastors and the priests and the preachers that have the capacity to be holy. Every human has the capacity to live out their divinity. That's what he's saying.
Hallelujah. Beautifully said. Thank you.
It's a
Thank
preaching
you.
moment.
It is. I
Thank
did
you.
love that.
Grateful
Thank
for your
you.